All right. Welcome back to the How It's Relate podcast. I'm here with Michael Fulwiler.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. I was fortunate enough to take your marketing course a few months back, and I enjoyed it. And you're like the OG therapist marketing expert.
That makes me feel old at 36. But yes, no, it was a fun program. I'm glad that we connected through it. And we were just chatting before hitting record. And sounds like you've stayed in touch with other folks that were part of that program as well. So that was great to hear.
Yeah, quite a few people were on the podcast, and then we kind of mentioned Justin, Chris, Gwen. So yeah, it was a good group and way to connect with people. Yeah. So what are some things that it sounds like you work with a lot of therapists or therapist organizations
Yes,
on consulting for their marketing?
correct. Yeah. So I would describe myself as a marketing professional for mental health companies, which is not something that I set out to do. If you asked me when I was 12 years old what my dream job would be, it probably wouldn't be a marketing professional for mental health companies. But I've kind of stumbled into this space in this field and really fell in love with it. And so, yeah, I've had the opportunity and privilege to work with companies as large as the Gottman Institute, and I got to really travel the country with the Gottmans to trainings, and it was such an amazing experience. I've worked with group practices, I've worked with solo practices, I've worked with mental health tech companies as well. And so really kind of across the board.
I mean, you work for the Gottman, which in our
Yeah.
field, they're the celebrities. They're the most widely known couples therapy modality researchers. They've been doing it the longest, at least here in the US. They have the longest-standing couples research out there.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I was at the University of Washington as an undergrad and I was looking for an internship before I graduated. So my senior year, this was 2011. And I got this internship at the Gottman Institute, which I had no idea what that was. And I come to learn that the Gottmans are the leading researchers and experts in the world on marriage and relationships. And so it was funny, me being this senior in college, interning for this relationship and marriage company, which I probably had no business doing. But I ended up staying. I got an offer to come on full time after I graduated and stayed for almost 10 years. And so by the time I left, I had worked my way up. I was the chief marketing officer on the executive team. And it was really, like I said, such an amazing opportunity for me as like someone who's, coming out of school to really get that experience.
It's such a cool experience when you're just graduating college and you're looking for a marketing internship that a relationship institute may not have been the highest on the list. Yeah.
I think if you had asked me my senior year, I was probably more interested in sports marketing. My dream job probably would have been, I was in Seattle, be like the head of marketing or VP of marketing for the Seattle Mariners. Like that would have been such a cool job. But
Yeah.
I started working with the Gottman Institute and I started working with therapists and talking to therapists. And I just became so impressed by the work that therapists do. And I honestly, I know it sounds corny, but I felt very called to support them.
What are some common, like, because in thinking about, and again, I'm not a marketing expert. It's just that I've
Yeah.
done in trying to run a business and market a podcast and everything else. It's just been kind of taking courses like yours or the internet, ChatGPT, Instagram, all of them, piecing it together. There's a lot to know about marketing in
Yeah.
because it's like I know what I do and the modalities that I use and who I'm trying to work with, but to translate that in a way that speaks to someone, there's this bridge to cross, and it feels like I'm not totally sure what steps to take
Yeah.
in getting over to that part. So, what are some of the things that you see, and particularly in therapist marketing, that are maybe some of the struggles or some of the ways that you've been able to kind of take some of our jargon and make it more palatable and understandable for the general population?
Yeah, definitely. So this is a relationship focused podcast, right? So I
Yeah.
think about marketing really being all about relationships, and business in general is all about relationships. And so when I work with therapists or I work with companies on their marketing strategy, it always starts with who you're marketing to. Like, who is your audience as a therapist? Who is your ideal client? Or if you're a business, a consumer, more consumer focused company, like, who's your ideal customer? And then the marketing needs to speak to them, right? So you really need to understand who that person is. What are they struggling with? What are they trying to achieve? What are they looking for? All of those things. And then your marketing can really speak to those things. But if you don't have clarity on who you're marketing to, then your marketing is probably not going to be very effective. And what I see, I think the biggest mistake that I see is there's a lack of clarity on who you're trying to market to, but also there's this sort of, what companies do is they try to market to everybody. And so there's like a lack of focus as well. And so that's often where I like to start with therapists and with, companies as well, is like, okay, who are we actually trying to market to? Who's our niche? Who's our target audience? Right? All of those words kind of mean the same thing. But I would say kind of like not understanding who that profile or persona is, and then also just being like too broad and too general.
If you're talking to everyone, you're talking to no one.
Yes, that is what we say in the industry, right? And that sort of feels like counterintuitive when I talk to therapists about like getting more specific and really niching down. Their general concern is, well, I'm really going to limit the amount of potential clients that I can work with, right? Like, why would I do that? That seems sort of counterintuitive as a business owner. Shouldn't I have sort of like a really wide net? But the reality is that, especially as a therapist, like, if you're marketing to everyone, you're not really marketing to anyone. And when someone is looking for a therapist, usually they're looking for a therapist that can help them with the specific thing that they're struggling with, right? Like, if I'm having a hard time I'm a retired athlete and I'm sort of transitioning out of being an athlete, and I'm just like really struggling with my identity and all of that. Like, there's sports psychologists that, like, that's what they do, right? Or, you know, we just had a baby and maybe I'm struggling with, postpartum. Like, there's therapists who do very specific things. And so as a client, I'm generally looking for a therapist who I feel like can help me with what I'm struggling with. And so the more that our marketing can speak to that, the better.
I can imagine that when you're working and having these conversations with therapists, that you're almost the pseudo therapist in the room because you're you're having to essentially e- you're shifting a whole paradigm.
Right.
School teaches us that everyone needs help, everyone deserves help, and that is absolutely like true. And then I think
Yeah.
that when we think of our marketing, we want to be like we want to help everybody, and so we kind of a lot of us, at least me in particular, came into this field with kind of like the rose-colored glasses, like let's go, let's change things, like let's help as many people as we possibly can.
Yeah.
But what that doesn't do in marketing, especially in solo practices, smaller group practices, where you're not niching down, is that you then don't get clients.
Right.
Because it's so I can imagine that working with therapists, you're kind of doing a lot of the how do we basically CBT you
Right.
to like change your mindset around this and
Yeah.
then change your marketing around this and then change how you feel about this.
Right. Exactly. I end up doing a lot of that as well. I think there's two things that come up that I would consider limiting beliefs that therapists have around marketing and kind of as a business owner. One is, a lot of therapists feel uncomfortable with this idea that if they're marketing themselves and they're putting themselves out there, they're profiting off of people's pain, and it doesn't feel good. And therapists will tell me, well, like, I don't feel good about trying to target people based on, the problems that they're having. Like, they'll find me, and I'll say, well, you can't help them if they can't find you. Right. And so as a therapist, you're not, I mean, I guess technically you're profiting off of someone's pain, but you're also providing a service, right? And you're helping them. And you're running a business. Like, if you're in private practice, if you're not profitable, you're probably not going to stay in business, right? And you can't help anyone if you're not in business. And so there is like a mindset shift there around, like, people are looking for help, and it's important that they can find me, because if they can't find me, they can't get the help that they need. The other one that I see is a lot of therapists are uncomfortable with being seen. And I think that it's very common, right? Because a lot of therapists, like, they don't talk about themselves. It's like they create space for their clients. But now when it's time to market yourself, it's like, well, now I'm the focus and this feels weird. And I'm not used to this. And maybe I became a therapist because, like, I don't want to make stuff about me. So there's probably some like deeper stuff there too. So not that I am a therapist and we like process these things. And if you are a therapist and you're listening and you're like, yeah, that's me, that's probably something to talk about with your therapist. But
This is
yeah,
a
I would,
knowing laugh. Yeah, this is the
right.
knowing laugh
Those
right
are, I
now.
would say those are like the two things that I see, which makes sense. And I think they're totally normal.
Hmm. Which, yeah, some pretty emotionally
Yeah.
emotionally driven conversations to have. How is it helping people get from point A, where they might be uncomfortable around visibility and not wanting to feel salesy, to
Yeah,
point B with feeling authentic and true to themselves in their marketing and feeling seen in their work?
exactly. Yeah. I think that there's also just like an inherent sort of ick feeling, for lack of better word, about marketing and sales. I think when a lot of people hear those words, it's like sort of what comes up for them is like the used car salesman. And they're like, I don't want to do that. It doesn't feel good. But really what that is that's bad marketing and that's bad sales. It's not ethical marketing. It's not, good marketing. And so there's a way to market yourself that is ethical and that feels good for people and helps them to feel seen.
Mm. You recently wrote a newsletter, because you have a newsletter that comes out every Tuesday.
Hmm.
And I love it because it's I read it every week. It's short, it's to the point, it gives very specific actionable items.
Yep.
And I think it was this week where you said, "Don't just slap a Brene Brown quote or quote on your website."
Yeah. Yeah.
So why should we not just slap a quote on the
Oh my
website?
gosh. Yeah. I had to practice some restraint. I took some screenshots of therapist websites and I was going to include them, but I didn't want to call anyone out. But yeah, so this is something that I see. I look at a lot of therapist websites just because of the work that I do. And I see a lot of quotes, like there's a Carl Rogers quote or a Brene Brown quote. And I understand why people do it. I think it maybe is like an expression of their beliefs, maybe, or it feels in alignment with their practice, something like that. So there's nothing inherently wrong with like an inspirational quote, but from my perspective, it's not really adding any value to your website, right? So if I'm coming to your website and I'm trying to learn more about you and how you work, and if you're a good fit for me, what is a Brene Brown quote doing for me, right? Like, it's not helping me to get to know you better. Maybe like in your bio, if you want to include like a favorite quote or something like that, like that's fine. But when like the first thing that I see when I come to your homepage is like a Brene Brown quote, it's like, it just sort of feels like there could be something that you could include there that would be better,
Yeah.
is what I'll say about that.
Because I'm sure that there
Right.
could be, yeah. Any tips of what, I'll say should, which therapists don't like that word, but like what should be on a like, front page of a website? What should be?
Mm, yeah. So there's research that's been done that shows that when someone comes to your website, I don't remember if it's like 3 seconds or 5 seconds, but there's basically like a very short amount of time where someone comes to your website, especially if they're coming from Google. So they search, anxiety therapist Raleigh, and your website shows up. They click on it. You have a few seconds before they either decide, oh, this is interesting. Let me scroll around, click around, or they just bounce. They're like, oh, this isn't what I'm looking for. So it's like very important that your homepage, especially that section that I would call like above the fold. So before you have to scroll down, like what do you see? That it's just very clear about who you are, what you do. Sometimes I'll see quotes, which we've talked about, but other times it's like, find your path is like the headline on the website. I'm like, okay, I don't know what that means. So I think and the question I always ask is, could this be on someone else's website, right? Like if the language on your homepage, especially on the top of your homepage, if this could be any other therapist, then it's probably not specific enough. For example, I mentioned that I'm a marketing professional with mental health companies. I specialize in a type of marketing called content marketing. And so I think if you go to my website, right on the top, it says, I help mental health companies grow through content marketing. It's like very specific. It's what I do. It's the problem that I help solve. So whatever that is for you, ideally it's kind of who you work with and what you help them to achieve. If you can even get in sort of what they're struggling with, that would be great too. And then something I always recommend too is like give people a next step. Give them a call to action. And so, on a homepage, you have like a headline that's very clear about who you are, and then there's a button. Typically it's schedule a free call or, book your first session or contact me, something like that. But give them sort of a next step. So if they're like, "Oh, this sounds great. How do I sort of move forward in this process?" Whereas like, "Oh, now I have to sort of scroll around and try to figure out what to do, and I can't find the contact form," and then I leave. So
I
I think
scroll
it's
all the
really
way
about
down to the
like,
bottom
yeah,
to
exactly.
get
It's
there.
don't make people think is sort of how I describe it.
Make it so obvious they can't ignore it. And it sounds like the formula is who you help and the problem you solve.
Yes.
So if someone, let's say, I was just having a conversation with someone yesterday, and it's like, I really like the life transitions. I like the 20 to 50 age range. I like somatic work. I also like trauma work. I like dealing with anxiety and family
Yeah.
work. So these are all the things that they're kind of coming in with. If someone's going to put this kind of on a website, and I understand that this is sort of like, I'm just like throwing this at you.
We're doing it
So
live.
if someone's like coming in with like, hey, like,
Yeah.
they struggle with like, maybe like some family issues, some like transitions, stress. And I like to use like somatic work and, kind of like the kind of behavioral therapy stuff. Like I like to
Yeah.
integrate those two. What might be helpful to have on a website and what might be too much to have on a website? Like, cause I'm
Right.
imagining naming all five of those would be a little too much.
So a couple questions I would ask. One, where is this practice based? Like what's the location?
Okay.
So say it's, I'm in Providence, Rhode Island, right? So that's important because typically, clients are looking for a therapist in their area. If it's in person, obviously that becomes important. If it's telehealth, like there's a little bit more flexibility there. And then are you taking insurance or not? And so what it could look like if you don't have a very specific niche, and this goes back to like, if you have a very specific target population or ideal client that you work with, actually marketing becomes a lot easier because it's a lot easier to write directly to an individual person, right? Versus like, well, I work with kind of a wide range and, different ages presenting concerns. Then the actual crafting of the messaging becomes more difficult because you have to speak to a larger audience. But I would say, that it's like high quality or authentic or whatever sort of like word you would describe sort of your practice, like therapy in whatever, that could be it, right? Because it's like, okay, it's like therapy in this place, you know, maybe you take insurance, maybe you don't. And then I think like when I hear like somatic, I'm like, I don't really know what that means. So like, how would the client describe me? It's like, I guess question for you, like, how would you describe like a somatic approach to a potential client?
Yeah. I would say things like using like it could be using breathing techniques or
Mm,
body techniques, getting in touch with your physical and emotional sensations might be a
yeah,
way to describe it to a client.
right. So maybe it's sort of like a whole body approach or something like that, where it's sort of alluding to this isn't just like talk therapy. Maybe it's, like a dynamic approach or something like language that a client would read and be like, "Oh, okay, I understand what that means," versus like, again, going back to don't make me think, right? Like if it's like offering somatic therapy, it's like, I don't know what somatic therapy is. But if
Mhm.
it's, like full body therapy or, something like that, where it's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Let me read more about that.
Sure. What do you think about the term holistic approach?
I think that it's fine. I think it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, again, what does that mean? Is it like holistic approach where we're doing like massage and also like are there other like types of practices like a holistic practice? I'm like, okay, is there like different sort of services that are being offered? I think about like holistic versus maybe more like research based or science based. Coming from Gottman, right? It was very like research and science based. And so I think there's kind of if I was to craft some messaging around that, I guess I would ask like, well, what does like holistic mean in this context? Is it like it's not just talk therapy, it's other types of therapy? Is it different types of practices? Because I think holistic is kind of vague. But I think if it's like, holistic practices with a research based whatever, it's like, oh, we have sort of both things or a combination of both, then that could work.
Okay. I like that. I guess thinking about the couples therapy piece
Hmm.
is, I don't know if this is true or not, but there's common things that people might put on like a couples therapy website even,
Yeah.
and we'll put the modalities, emotionally focused therapy, Gottman,
Hmm.
Imago, whatever it might be. But then I also think about a lot of couples therapists, what I see is that they'll often put the issues, your high conflict couples, your dead bedroom couples, you're lacking a sense of connection, you feel like roommates. Like I think that in some ways, thinking whenever I see a couples therapist website, there's a lot that they speak to the dynamic about the relationship, which
Yep.
I feel like works well. At least a lot of the couples therapists that I know, it's like whenever I look at their websites, I'm like, you nailed it. Like,
Right.
like you like because I wonder, and this is just kind of an idea that's just half baked, but I kind of do wonder when people talk about like the relational dynamic between for a couples therapy and marketing, is
Hmm.
it almost in some ways easier because you're describing the problem that a couple is coming in to solve. When you're describing an individual, there's a lot like an individual is going to be experiencing to seek therapy.
Mm.
So I almost wonder if there's that difference between like, let's say couple relational, even like
Yeah.
I'll say a specialty like addiction, like that's a pretty like granted you can use different modalities and things like that, but there are certain, I think, specialties that sort of offer just by nature easier tactics for marketing than when you're
Right.
like, but what about like the trauma and the eclectic modalities I like to use? And I like to be an artist and get crafty and use all these different things. And therefore I like
Yeah.
to work with all these different people. And so it can feel like we get lost in the sauce a bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's interesting. I think so. I mean, I think what you're bringing up is that with individuals, often like what presents as anxiety or depression or addiction, but there's probably something else that's going on, or, there's
Mhm.
sort of other things beneath the surface. Whereas maybe in couples therapy, the sort of presenting concern is a little bit more like specific, or like there was an affair and we're trying to figure that out, or like we had a baby and now our, relationship is struggling, or whatever. Like there's, we're fighting a lot or we're not having sex or whatever it is.
Mhm.
That yeah, I think probably that I could see that where it's like that's sort of the thing that I like help couples that are struggling with versus individuals. Maybe it it's harder to kind of pinpoint that.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. There's just an idea.
Totally, but no, and then in terms of like saying in your marketing that I am a certified Gottman therapist or I'm EFT trained or I practice it, like I think that it feels very natural to want to talk about your training and your credentials as a therapist as a way to kind of like establish credibility, right? So like this is where I went to school and this is sort of the trainings that I've done. But the reality is that most clients don't really care. I think that I think they want to care that you're like legit and you're a professional, but like that you have this certification, I don't really think matters, at least up front. I think that what matters is what you've described, like, oh, this is actually a therapist who especially who helps couples who are struggling with the thing that we're struggling with. Now, when I'm reading more about them and I'm reading their bio and I see that they went to school, and so okay, now like I have more confidence in this person's ability as a clinician. But if we put right on our Psychology Today or our homepage that these are the modalities, it's like, people don't really care and they also don't really know what those words mean. And so when I see that, that's generally my recommendation to therapists is like, speak to a client in your marketing the way that you would speak to them on the phone or in an intake session. right? Like you probably wouldn't throw like, your credentials and stuff at them in an initial conversation.
Sure. Almost like there's a difference between marketing with clients versus marketing with your resume.
Hmm. Yes, and what a lot of therapists do is they make their website or their Psychology Today their resume. So a lot of the work that I do is actually helping them to not do that. I want to put that all in there, right? Because that feels like something I should do. But I think what is sort of beneath that, right, is that when a client is looking for a therapist, it's really like an emotional decision. It's not really like a logical decision. Like, oh, I'm looking for a PhD who has these credentials. I think they're looking for someone who they feel like they can relate to, who they feel like can help them. And that other stuff, I think, is a bonus. But when we lead with that stuff, I think it misses the mark.
Sure. Any exercises that you like to give people to help them gain more clarity in their marketing? Mm.
Something that I encourage you to do is to go through your own website, go through your own marketing as a potential client, right? So starting with when I Google, anxiety therapist, wherever you are, or whatever your sort of specialization is, do I even show up? And if I'm not showing up on Google, okay, we probably have some work to do on our SEO. And that's a whole nother conversation. But once I get to the website, like if I don't know, if I've never been to this website before, is it clear to me within 3 to 5 seconds what this person does? If it's not, okay, we probably need to clarify our messaging. Okay, it looks interesting. How do I move forward? Can I book a call? Do I have to hunt around? Are the links broken? Like I'm shocked sometimes at some of these websites that I see where it's like you can't even like a therapist will tell me like people aren't calling, and then I go to their website and like the link's broken. It's like, well, yeah, of course they're not calling you. So just going through the exercise of almost like secret shopping yourself, if that makes sense, right? So put yourself in the client's shoes. Same thing with your Psychology Today. Like if you were to sort of look at it as a client from their perspective, would it make sense to you? Is it clear? Those types of things. I would recommend doing that. And I think that's a helpful exercise to do on a regular basis because often we create our website, we write our marketing copy, and then it just sits there for 5 years. And in that time, our business has changed. Maybe we sort of work with a different population now. Maybe we've done more trainings, but our marketing is outdated. And so I think it's probably a worthwhile exercise to do that at least once a year, I would say. Especially now, like the beginning of the year, it's a good time to just kind of review all your stuff, make sure that it is up to date.
Sure. It's kind of interesting that we're talking about this in particular because I was in the therapist collective. We just had our first like kind of kickoff of the year Monday meeting. And a lot of people's goals was to simplify and tighten up the screw,
Mm,
so to speak.
hmm
That it's
hmm
like I'm not trying to add more on, but I am trying to simplify. And this is, I think, a great
Yes,
way to do that. It's what do I already have that could be tweaked just a bit rather than what more do I need to do? Because I think marketing can also feel overwhelming when there's so many avenues to go down. Do I get on
yep,
Instagram? Websites, SEO. Do I do podcasts? Do I, like
right.
what do I need to do? And it can feel like there's tons of ways to do it. It's just what are the ways that feel best and speak to you?
Definitely. I would say most therapists who reach out to me think that they have a marketing problem. They think they need to do more marketing, but they really have a messaging problem. Like their messaging isn't clear. And so our conversations are more about who do you work with, the things that we've talked about, right? Like who is your ideal client? I had a I had a therapist who told me that she worked with men and really loved to work with men. That was her specialty. But she wasn't getting a lot of men reaching out to her. And so I went to her website and it didn't say anything about men. And I was like, yeah, of course. Why would you be attracting men to your practice? You're not speaking to men on your website. And she said, well, is that weird? Like, can I just say that I work with men? And I was like, yeah, why can I not? Like, it's your
Yeah.
business. You can work with whoever you want. And so I think there's like some of that, right? I think we had talked about like, oh, I don't want to exclude anyone. I want to help everyone. And maybe there was a fear of judgment. Like I'm a female therapist and I work with male clients. Like, what are women going to think of that? And so there's
Sure.
some mental stuff there, but it's like No, you don't need to like post more on Instagram, or you don't need to like start a newsletter to get more clients. You just actually have to be more clear
Mm,
in who you work with. And
right.
so that's usually where those conversations go around like marketing and all of the different things that you can do to market your practice. Actually, it's like maybe you need to do less things, but just be more clear.
Hone in on the things that you really want and want to go for. Like if it, yeah, like if
Yeah.
it is, I want to work with male clients, it's like go hone in on
Yeah.
it. Like that makes sense.
And I think there's so much power in that, right? Like in marketing, we talk about being sort of known as the person who does X, right? And that's like the power of niching down. A lot of therapists that I work with, they operate like a very general practice and they like to kind of work with everyone and they like the variety of that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's just a little bit more difficult to get clients, especially if you don't take insurance. I think in my experience, if you want to be out of network, private pay, cash pay, like it's really helpful to be more specific in who you work with. Whereas if you take insurance, you can be a little bit more general.
Sure. Yeah. And you mentioned the location piece too. Why does location matter?
Location matters because of how people look for a therapist. Usually, someone who is searching for a therapist is going on to Google, or now they're actually going on ChatGPT or the LLM that they use, and they're looking for a therapist in their area. Google or ChatGPT will kind of produce results based on those searches. And so it's trying to match like, okay, who are like the therapists in the area that are kind of that match these keywords maybe that you were looking for. Something that's really helpful for what I would call local SEO is having a Google business profile or Google business page set up for your practice. It's free. And the reason for that is when someone searches on Google, actually Google Maps brings in search results. So if you look for like, even if you look for like, I was searching for a plumber recently. So I was like, plumber near me, right? And it's going to show service and like businesses in my area with the Google Maps results. And then it's going to rank those results based on ratings. And so one thing that I recommend to therapists as kind of like a very low hanging fruit marketing tactic is go set up your Google business profile. Unfortunately, as a therapist, we can't ask clients to leave us a review, but you can ask colleagues, you can ask friends, people who've been on your podcast, hey, would you, leave me a review? And so when someone searches, therapist near me, you're more likely to show up in that search.
It's great. So we can help each other out.
Yes, absolutely.
Any final thoughts or takeaways that you want to leave for people?
Hmm, that's tough. Something that I think about a lot is that a lot of therapists feel like they're not good at marketing. I'm not a marketer. I didn't go to business school. But we've talked about their marketing, sorry. Marketing is like very much about relationships. And it's also about really understanding your audience. And no one understands their clients more than therapists because you talk to them every day, right? So most companies, what they do, if they want to talk to their customers, they have to like do user research surveys and they try to have to get people on. But like as a therapist, you talk to your clients every day. So you have like a very intimate understanding of these people, right? And so when it comes to marketing and writing your copy for your website, and if you're putting out content, you really know the types of things that these people are struggling with. Not that you're like using things from your sessions in your content, right? But you just like you understand very deeply about kind of who you work with. I would say more than most, professionals. So I think you already are like a step ahead in that sense. And also therapists are just really great at relating. And so I think that's another, advantage that therapists have as well. So I actually think therapists are very good at marketing. I think marketing can just feel intimidating. But kind of once you get beyond that, my experience is that therapists actually are good at marketing. They just
It's
don't
great.
know it yet.
Yeah. You may have just shattered everyone's imposter syndrome. You already have what you need. Sweet. I appreciate you for coming on. You have open invitation if you ever want to come back and we can chat more about this because I love talking about this topic. I think it's
Yeah,
so fun to talk about business, marketing, all of it. So it's fun.
absolutely. Yeah, and if anyone, is listening, has questions, please reach out to me. You mentioned my newsletter. I write a newsletter, goes out every week for therapists called Therapy Marketer. If you just put that in Google, hopefully my SEO is good enough. It should show up. I find myself more on LinkedIn these days. And so if you're on LinkedIn, definitely connect with me there as well.
And we'll put your links in the show notes as well. So you can Google and see what the analytics
Google,
do.
yeah,
Or you can also direct access. We'll have a direct
right.
link.
Sure.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, thank you so much and enjoy the day.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Until next time, everyone, stay connected.